Attorney Arriola. Can you just tell us your stance on this bar survey and a response to AG Moylan's response to it as well?
Sure, yes. Thank you again for inviting the bar to give our position on this very important issue. The Attorney General has asked the legislature to provide a certain exemption to allow the attorneys at the Attorney General's office to remain in private practice while representing the government of Guam and the people of Guam in criminal and civil cases in our courts and in other cases. The general contends that this is the way the law always was. We've always had private prosecutors, and so he's just going back to the way it was in order to fulfill a staffing pattern and a need for human resources in his office. That is an incorrect statement of the law. That's a misstatement of the law. Some would say that's an outright error or is simply wrong because the law is very clear in Guam and throughout the country. Specifically, the prosecutor, the attorney general, the chief law enforcement officer of the territory of Guam is prohibited specifically from engaging in private practice outside of representing the government and the people. And the reason is very simple: conflicts of interest. In our survey, 67% of the lawyers disagreed with Doug Moylan's position that we should have certain exemptions just because he's having manpower and human resource issues to fulfill his mandate and his supposed, election mandate to be tough on crime and do things as he says they should be. But that simply flies in the face of well-established law and precedent. And I think all of the Guam lawyers who responded set forth some pretty basic tenets of the law, that we don't have private prosecutors because of inherent conflicts of interest. For instance, the Guam Bar has in its possession at least 4 different private services contracts with private lawyers who are engaged in private practice and who are now practicing representing the government of Guam, the Attorney General's office, and the people of Guam. The people of Guam prosecuting defendants. One of them, or 2 of them, are members of the panel of private attorneys who are represented and currently represent indigent defendants. Does anybody see a conflict there? That one day he's sitting at that table prosecuting defendants, the next day he's asking for his client's bail. What about the cases that I have against these lawyers in my civil practice? Do I have to fear that my criminal client has a problem going against this lawyer who represents his wife in divorce case? Because it's entirely possible. One lawyer here is a member of the panel. Another lawyer who has another private contract with the government AG's office represents at least 2 government of Guam agencies. Now, that lawyer, my understanding, may be working in the government corruption unit, prosecuting other members of boards and commissions, prosecuting other directors and agencies of the government of Guam. Does anybody see the conflict there? Are those agencies that he represents, that he gives legal advice to on a civil side, hey, you can do this GDB or you can do this GURA. AG won't prosecute you. You know why? I work over there too. Does anybody see the conflict? It's not rocket science. It's pretty basic. And when the Attorney General gets on the air and says, I need to fulfill a mission, we're not having staffing problems, quite frankly, that's not the people of Guam's biggest problem in terms of regulation of lawyers. We cannot just change the whole system because there's a new sheriff in town. And the fact of the matter is, more than half, I can't even keep track anymore. More than half of the lawyers have split. That's just a management problem. And he's fine with it. He says, out the door. You don't like you don't want to prosecute so-and-so, the director of public health. You don't want to prosecute the GRTA board. You're out the door. That's what he said. You know, there's the whole ethical side. Let's talk about the civil service side. What about all his career employees who've been there for 30 years getting their government salary? Yet here comes so-and-so in private practice earning $200 an hour. Somewhere there's a grievance. This is the same lawyer who now does not want to represent the public agencies. Why? Because of a conflict. He'd rather prosecute them than help them. How are you going to issue sanitary permits? Who should we hire to be the board director or the executive director? Oops, he doesn't have a college degree. Maybe you should terminate him and hire somebody who does. Oh, you're issuing 3,000 sanitary permits every June 30th of 2022, and you've never inspected half of them because there's 3,000 of them? Maybe you should start inspecting them before you issue them. No, you're tampering with public records, third-degree felony. You're stealing government money by giving Mr. Ibanez more in his salary than he would have made if he had a college degree. The conflicts are inherent and they're patent. And we hope that the legislature sees through his smoke screens. The budget's already passed, so these contracts are flying out the door. As far as we heard today in court, a former prosecutor is going back. I've confirmed with my good friend Sandy Miller. She's leaving. She's been there 30 years. 30-some years as a solicitor giving advice to public health. Oh, giving advice to public health, it's okay. There's a delay in issuing permits and inspections. And she's no longer going to be at that office effective September 29th. She's joining 3 others at Rev and Tax who left the AG's office this year. And there's a reason they're leaving. It's not because of pay. It is not because of pay. If the public defenders getting paid 15% less can have their full staff, all locally based lawyers. There, I think maybe 1 or 2 temporary lawyers. 1 or 2 temporary lawyers who are not, under the realm of the general. It's a management problem. And it is not the legislature's problem to change the laws on Guam to accommodate this one general. I think if they take a closer look at his contracts, look what it says. They will do these services in the sole discretion of the Attorney General. Sounds like you're a hired hatchet man. Hired hatchet man. I will tell you what to prosecute, what not to prosecute. And like he says, if you don't like it, out the door. Yeah, good money. Who says there's not enough? The thing is, he's taking all the lawyers to go contract for government. Then the private bar is stuck. We can't hire people. There's no defense. 2 of the lawyers on the panel are going to have to resign to now go work for him. Who's going to represent the criminal defendants? I've been with the bar for 30-some years. It's a recurring problem. It's a generational problem. It's nothing new. Election promises. It's a political office. I don't know. Maybe it's time to really reconsider our elected Attorney General. That's what everybody's talking about. Okay, you don't want to focus or represent the governor in the civil section, but you want to prosecute everybody? Maybe we should have an elected prosecutor and go back to the governor's lawyer is the governor's appointee. That sounds a little more refreshing. Sounds a little more workable. And so on behalf of the Bar Association, we respectfully encourage the legislature, and especially our colleagues, Speaker Therese Tulahi, Senator Tom Fisher. They know the rules. They know what's going on here, and they know their bar. They know their bar. I understand the Attorney General made some concerns that perhaps the bar's, tabulations or survey was skewed, multiple responses. Hey, only one person sent an email to all the private lawyers that day saying, please vote in favor of this survey. And by the way, if you want to work for me, I can give you a contract for $200 an hour. Literally, he sent that out the day the survey was due. And so that's how he got 30 some responses in his favor, mostly government lawyers, of course. And, 67% said, no, it's not appropriate. He questions, oh, well, the private lawyers are just seeking out their own interest. Not quite. We have an obligation. We swore to uphold the law as well and to do our part in serving justice. And when one person gets out there and tries to change the whole system just to suit his whims, somebody's got to speak up and, caution them. And I encourage the legislature in particular not to fall prey to his, claims of, I have to do it. I can't hire anybody. Go deep, dig a little deeper. Call in those former employees. They still work for GovGuam, just at a different department. Why'd you leave? After 30 some years, you left? Ask them. But so when he says that, there's a hiring problem, I got this, I need these contracts, there's all kinds of problems with them. And it's gotten to the point where at least the defense bar is going to make concerted efforts. I intend to challenge some of them, challenge them in court, move to disqualify any of them that may be inappropriately hired. And this is probably something that the courts are going to have to step in and say, hey, what's going on here? You can't just do this if indeed Mr. Han is here one day on this side and here the next day. Something's wrong with that, and it's time for our courts, I think, to step in. I've already, some of the defendants have already started making objections in that, as a general rule, the law, as I've cited it to, as the lawyers have cited it, neither the Attorney General nor any person employed in the Department of Law shall engage in any outside employment which shall conflict with the duties within the Department of Law. Attorneys employed as classified or unclassified attorneys in the Department of Law, or any attorney employed as classified or unclassified by any GovGuam agency, shall not, emphasis in the original, shall not engage in the practice of law outside the Department of Law. That's the rule. So when the general gets up here and says, we've always done it this way, please correct him. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just one of those. We can't have these things stand without being corrected. And it's our obligation as lawyers to keep the public informed and to protect the administration of justice and the public. We don't want our people, when someone gets up there and says, I represent the people of the territory of Guam, and we want this guy to go to jail, we want to make sure that prosecutor is conflict-free. Hiring private prosecutors is against all notions of conflict-free prosecutors. That's why they only work as prosecutors. You can't obey two masters. Thanks for your inquiry. Any other questions?
No,
Well,
I think you pretty much answered all of my questions at least. If the post wanted
you don't have to keep running it.
Or
Please stop and pause it when you get. Please stop and pause it. There goes Jay with the run on. But I guess off the record, I guess I just have to counter his run on, because if you don't counter them, they just keep going off. And the people in the bar, everybody's like, I'm so tired, I don't want to take the time. Plus where they work, everybody's gonna say, oh, I work here, and so they're gonna criticize me because I used to work there, or that's never been one of my concerns. That's not how I was raised. Let's put it that way. That's not how I was raised, and that's not how I operate as a private practitioner. I realize I may not be a politician or anything, or serving government, but there's other ways we help the public, and that's part of all of the Guam lawyers. All of the Guam lawyers keep that obligation seriously.